The town of STARÁ ĽUBOVњA is one of the most ancient and the most remarkable towns of the Upper Spiš region. A picturesque town situated close to the northern borders with Poland, was in the past one of significant craft and market centers, lying on an important trade route to Poland. Thanks to the trade route and the influence the town had in its region, it became a focus of interest of both Polish and Hungarian emperors, and also an economic, political and cultural connection between the Spiš and Malopolska province. Its rich history is demonstrated by many preserved mansions and sites. The first written mention about STARÁ љUBOVњA is represented by a deed going back to 1292 under a Slavonian name Libno, and several years after that as a Lublo. The village was named by a corn stream Liblo, today called Jakubianka. Special attention deserves one of its monuments, the љUBOVњA Castle, dating back to the 14th century. Previously a Gothic castle, was rebuilt in the course of the centuries in the Renaissance and the Baroque style, and it was a place visited by Hungarian and Polish kings at a point of important political negotiations. A key milestone in the history of a town was the year 1342, when the King Louis I provided the town of љUBOVњA royal city privileges, which promoted the town to free royal towns with the right of a sword, which meant that solution of all legal issues was excluded from jurisdiction falling under the љUBOVњA Castle. The town flourished even after 1412, when љUBOVњA was included among 16 Spiš towns owned by Hungarian King Sigismund de Luxembourg to a Polish kingdom for a sum of 37,000 piles of Czech groschen. Thus, the town got under Polish administration, which was ended up as late as the reign of the Empress Maria Theresa. However, this was not a tragedy for the town, since in that period it was receiving privileges and benefits from both kingdoms. The significance of the castle was evidenced by many political meetings on the highest level of a big importance, and also by the fact that Polish crown jewels were hidden there during a Swedish and Polish war between the years 1665 and 1661. The castle was the seat of the Polish family Lubomirski, living there from 1591 to 1745. The last castle owners were the Zamoyski family, and they lived there until 1945. Besides monarchs, earls and aristocracy, an important role in the history of STARÁ љUBOVњA was played by its inhabitants. љUBOVњA was a place of trade and craft. In the 18th century, there was plenty of craftsmen workshops in the street of the town. Weavers, shoemakers, tailors, butchers and furriers were one of the wealthiest craftsmen. A new history of the town of STARÁ ĽUBOVŇA started in the beginning of the 20th century and is characterized by the beginning of progress, technologies and rich social life. At the beginning of the 20th century, STARÁ љUBOVњA had a multicultural and multi-ethnical character where Slovak, Polish, Ruthenian, German and Hungarian were living next to each other. The population was diversified in terms of religion, consisting of Roman Catholics, Protestants, Greek Catholics and Jewish. St. Nicholas Square is the oldest preserved part with several medieval and Renaissance houses. The fact that King Sigismund de Luxembourg owned 16 towns of the Spiš region had a considerable impact on the appearance of Љubovna. The town retained a character of a trade center, which is apparent at a very first sight on extremely large home cellars, which were used as stores at the time. Among many architectural monuments, one can admire in particular a late Renaissance building from the 17th century, a new Rococo house from the half of the 18th century, with later secession modifications, or an arcade Renaissance house with rich decorations. Today, there is a memorial tablet on the house devoted to Andrej Čepišák, a founder of the Municipal Museum. The museum is situated in a house in order to demonstrate a living style, town crafts, guilds, with an indigo print workshop and a live pottery workshop. An ancient St. Nicholas Church is a town dominant and at the same time its patron. The reason why it has been given its patronage is that the town of Љubovna was founded at a crossroads of trade routes, and thus St. Nicholas, as a protector of travelers, played an important role in the lives of traveling tradesmen. The church was built approximately in the 18th of the 13th century. Its architecture represents a mixture of several styles. We can find there a late Gothic statue of the Christ from the 16th century, the altars dating back to the end of the 18th and 19th centuries, a relief of Virgin Mary engagement from the first half of the 20th century. The Љubovna open-air museum reminds of the past of the Љubovna vicinity. It's one of the youngest ones in Slovakia and depicts dwelling, jobs and lives of local people in wooden log houses, utility objects, technical structures and workshops. A Greek Catholic church in the Matišova village, with a remarkable Baroque and classical iconostasis, is a dominant of the open-air museum. It goes back to 1883 and is devoted to a Saint Michael Archangel. Until now, the town history represents an inseparable part of the town, demonstrated, for example, by a historical military camp in the extramural settlement, presenting a military life in the 16th century. Talking about the town history, one cannot forget to mention personalities that were born here or lived here and were doing their activities here. Undoubtedly, one of them was Teresa Vansova, a writer and a publisher of a magazine Denica, and she was also a chairman of a women's association called Živena, and she was working together with her husband, an evangelic priest Jan Vanso, in a nearby village called Lomnička. Here she wrote her first lines and prose, both in Slovak and German languages, and here she worked as a lady priest, giving advice to women, and she was personally involved in cultural events. Anyway, Teresa Vansova is not forgotten in STARÁ ĽUBOVŇA. A cultural event devoted to women called Vansova's Lomnička, which is probably the oldest one in Slovakia, takes place in STARÁ љUBOVњA in the honor of Teresa Vansova, and it's aimed at presentation of old poetry and prose. A memorable room of Teresa Vansova has changed its address many times. Today, it's situated in a province house under the trusteeship of STARÁ љUBOVњA. It presents not only the artistic and life journey of Teresa Vansova, but it also promotes a Vansova's Lomnička event, which at the beginning had to undergo the same journey as a museum exposition. In April 2009, the town opened a memorable room of Jan Melkovič, a composer, a teacher, at the occasion of his 17th birthday in memoriam. As a child, he spent each holiday and free time here in his grandparents' house in Nižná Street. Here he also worked as a teacher at an art school, and later on he also loved to return here as a matured man. In his room there is his composer atelier, his collected antiques and works of art of older and younger generation of Slovak artists, as well as souvenirs from his travels abroad. Though STARÁ љUBOVњA is a smaller town in terms of its population, it doesn't lag behind bigger ones in its self-administration and social life. It looks after its public places, town green areas and sites very carefully. Each town inhabitant, including children, can find one's place for active spending of free time. The town even pays attention to international relationships and development of tourism. This is proven by the fact that it also continuously enlarges the networks of partner towns. In the last years, it was visited by ambassadors and diplomats from the USA, Russia, Poland, and even from India, Taiwan, Greece or Cyprus. Since February 2014, it's also a seat of Romanian embassy.
Vítajte v Starej Ľubovni.
The structure of cultural events is the evidence that the habits and traditions of the town are not on the decline. The STARÁ ĽUBOVњA inhabitants organized a traditional Ľubovna fair, as it was in the past, with a variety of craftsmen demonstrating their craft using specialties and attractions.
Jak się bawią ludzie, gdy kochają się.
The Upper Spiš is not only a place of history and sights, it's also a favorite tourist destination. Visit of STARÁ љUBOVњA or taking a stroll around its magnificent surroundings will impress deeply every visitor.